Chief Justice Carpio, pagkatapos maghugas ng kamay sa paninira kay Bongbong Marcos, heto na naman, pumapapel sa West Philippine Sea. Ay nako, Chief Justice, hindi ka na ba nagsasawa? Tungayan ng buong detalye, at kapag hindi pa nakapag-subscribe, subscribe na upang tuloy-tuloy ang ating talakayan.
Good morning, Karen. Thank you for having me in your show.
How vital is Ayungin Shoal in the country's fight in the West Philippine Sea?
Ayungin Shoal is situated between Palawan and Mischief Reef. Mischief Reef is the largest air and naval base of China in the South China Sea. The Chinese call Mischief Reef their Pearl Harbor in the South China Sea. Ayungin Shoal is just about 20 nautical miles from Mischief Reef, and that would be our outpost as a buffer in case China wants to encroach on Palawan or wants to attack Palawan. We have Mischief Reef there as a buffer. Secondly, Mischief Reef is near Reed Bank as well as Ayungin Shoal. So Ayungin Shoal, if we stay there, will help us monitor what the Chinese are doing in Mischief Reef in relation to Reed Bank. We can protect Reed Bank from Ayungin Shoal.
How do you read China's water cannon incident? What is the game plan here in the long run?
That water cannon is actually use of force, because that's physical. And this is the first time that China used its new Coast Guard law against the Philippines, because this year China passed its new Coast Guard law. That Coast Guard law authorized the Coast Guard vessels of China to use force against foreign ships that are found within China's 9-dash line and taking fish or surveying for oil and gas. So this is really the first time that China used its Coast Guard law against the Philippines. And this is an escalation. This is a big escalation because the use of force is outlawed under the UN Charter. Under international law, a state cannot use force to settle a territorial or maritime dispute with another state. They must use peaceful means such as negotiation, mediation, or arbitration. And that's what we did in Scarborough Shoal. We resorted to arbitration, which is a peaceful means. But China is using its law now in a law that is contrary to the UN Charter, because the UN Charter says a state cannot use force to settle a territorial or maritime dispute. China passed this year. That means that it's even beyond the territorial sea, beyond the exclusive economic zone or extended continental shelf of China, because the extended continental shelf, the farthest maritime zone a country can claim is 350 nautical miles. Ayungin Shoal is about 800 to 900 nautical miles from China. So China has no right at all to be in Ayungin Shoal. And Ayungin Shoal has been declared by the Arbitral Award as part of the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. So China has no right whatsoever to do what it did to water cannon Philippine resupply ships.
Yeah, and in terms of distance, Ayungin Shoal is 120 nautical miles from the west of Palawan.
About that, it's about that, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the water, this escalation clearly is one, a show of force. But what do you believe is China's long-term goal? Is it to build another artificial island in Ayungin Shoal?
Well, China doesn't want the Philippine Navy to be in Ayungin Shoal because it's very near Mischief Reef. And Mischief Reef is their biggest air and naval base in the South China Sea. It's their Pearl Harbor in the South China Sea. So they want the Philippine Navy out of Ayungin Shoal because it's too close. We can monitor what they're doing, and with our Navy in Ayungin Shoal, we can use that as a jumping board to protect our oil and gas in Reed Bank.
And if the Philippines uses control of Ayungin Shoal, economically speaking, what can happen to Reed Bank in, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Well, that means we have less protection in Reed Bank because we will be going to Reed Bank from Palawan already. With the Yungin Shoal, we can develop it into a military naval outpost to protect Reed Bank as additional protection to Reed Bank. And Reed Bank is our largest gas reserve. Malampaya is running out of gas in a few years. And Malampaya supplies 40% of the energy requirement of Luzon. Without Malampaya, we will be having 12 to 14 hours of daily brownout in Luzon. Factories will close, schools will close, malls will close. It will be worse than the pandemic. You cannot even work from home because there is no power. There's no internet. So we really have to preserve Reed Bank and even develop it now because it takes 4 to 5 years to develop Reed Bank and to connect the gas to connect a pipeline from Reed Bank to Malampaya. And then the gas will flow from Malampaya to Batangas. There's a pipeline about 500 kilometers long. But all of this is not happening because China is preventing us from drilling in Reed Bank. And we are not the only ones affected. China is also preventing Malaysia from drilling in their exclusive economic zones and also preventing Vietnam. So this is really ASEAN states against China.
So we'll talk about that in a bit. But first, of course, China is aware of the predicament of the BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal. This is not just symbolic for the Philippines. Clearly, it has an effect in our fight in the West Philippine Sea, our stake in the West Philippine Sea, and also the economics that go with it in the long run. So the question moving forward, what should the Philippines do? The ship will break apart. Give it, maybe in a few more years or in a few more months.
Yes, the superstructure of the ship is rusting and it could collapse in a few years. That's why the military is retrofitting it to make it last longer. But the solution really is to build on Ayungin Shoal, an outpost, because that's within our exclusive economic zone. And we are the only country authorized to create artificial islands within our exclusive economic zone.
And do you believe that course of action will give a clearer and stronger message to China?
Yes, I think we should push back because this involves gas already in Reed Bank. We have to protect that. And China, if we abandon Ayungin Shoal, will be free. Between Mischief Reef and Palawan, there will be no island. There will be no geologic feature that we can use to block China. So this is really a military strategic asset for us to remain in Ayungin Shoal. And that's why our military insisting that we will stay there.
Yeah, but have we neglected Ayungin Shoal as a country? Looking at the state of the BRP Sierra Madre, knowing that there are naval officers inside that boat.
Yes,
I think so much of what the country stands for.
Yes, sadly, we have not worked on strengthening our defenses in Ayungin Shoal. As I said, we should build an artificial structure there, a stilt with just like what the Vietnamese and the Chinese have been doing in low tide elevations in the Spratlys. We should be doing that, but first of all, the Duterte administration doesn't want to displease China. So that's holding us back. But we should do that because that's within our exclusive economic zone. We have the right to put up an artificial island within our exclusive economic zone under UNCLOS. That's a right.
So what do you make of President Duterte's strong statements against China?
Well, I remember what he said during the elections, during the campaign in 2016. He said, I will jet ski to Scarborough Shoal and plant the flag. After he was elected, he said, I was just joking. So I don't I cannot say that he's serious here because he has been flip-flopping. He has been saying that China is already in possession of the West Philippine Sea. He has been saying that the arbitral award is a scrap of paper to be thrown to the wastebasket. So we don't really know now because he has been flip-flopping in the West Philippine Sea policy.
So you believe that even after all these statements, it's too late in the day and China's been emboldened by this administration?
No, it's not too late in the day because we can do this. But what if you're asking me about the sincerity of President Duterte, I doubt if he's sincere in what he's saying because he has been flip-flopping. He's been attacking the arbitral award, which is the basis, our basis for holding on to Ayungin Shoal. If you destroy the arbitral award, you destroy our legal basis for holding on to Ayungin Shoal.
The Department of Affairs has issued a diplomatic protest. Once again, do you still believe that's effective at this point? Several other countries have voiced their support for the Philippines.
Well, it's always good to file all of these diplomatic protests because sometime in the future, we will have to file another case against China for intimidating us in Ayungin Shoal. We can demand damages because they're also intimidating us in Reed Bank, and we cannot get the gas in Reed Bank. That's affecting our economy. It's causing so much damage to our national economy. All of these diplomatic protests will be useful in a future arbitration.
Okay, and not only that, several other countries have also voiced their support for the Philippines, with the United States issuing its strongest statement. How can we take advantage of all these other countries that have spoken up?
Well, it's not only the Philippines that is aggrieved here. You have Vietnam, Malaysia, the other countries. So what should be done is Vietnam, Malaysia, and the Philippines, the biggest countries affected by, the most affected by the 9-dash line of China, must come together and bring to arbitration their overlapping maritime claims, because we have overlapping claims with Vietnam, with Malaysia. So we will now say all of these maritime disputes among ourselves, we will settle in accordance with law, and that law is UNCLOS. So we submit it to arbitration under UNCLOS, and we invite China to join us. China will not join because China doesn't respect international law. Although it is a member of UNCLOS, it has a representative in the UNCLOS Tribunal, in the ITLOS, International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. So we will proceed with our arbitration. So that will be settled by arbitration, our overlapping claims among ourselves, Vietnam, Malaysia, the Philippines. So we will have no maritime dispute among ourselves. Our only dispute now will be with China, and China will be isolated. After that maritime dispute is settled by arbitration, the three countries, Vietnam, Malaysia, and the Philippines, can enter into convention that based on that arbitration and based on the arbitral award, The Hague, in favor of the Philippines, this is what will govern freedom of navigation and overflight in the South China Sea. That beyond the territorial seas of these small islands, there's freedom of navigation. Foreign warships, merchant ships, warplanes, and the civilian airplanes can pass through beyond the territorial sea because it's freedom of navigation in accordance with UNCLOS international law. And we will have this convention, we will put there that other naval countries can adhere, can accede to this convention. So what will happen there is the US, UK, France, Germany, Netherlands, Japan, Australia, India would all become a party to this convention. And that convention would recognize that there are exclusive economic zones of the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia in the South China Sea in accordance with UNCLOS. It will recognize the arbitral award, and that will isolate China. And the world will now have a document saying that there are exclusive economic zones of the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. And that will now debunk the 9-dash line. So we have to do this
Yeah,
because
yeah. And you believe,
and we have the support of the world to do this.
yeah, and you believe, Justice, this is still a job that this administration can do, given it has a few months left, or is this for the next president?
Well, this administration by choice will not do this because President Duterte doesn't want to displease President Z. Remember, President Duterte said, President Z is my protector. In case of a mutiny, he will protect me. So how can that vassal go against his protector? So we will have to wait for the next administration. And this is the number one of the priorities of the next administration because we are now being pressured to produce gas from the West Philippine Sea. Malampay is running out of gas. And if we don't develop reed bank, we will have brownouts. To avoid brownouts, 12 to 14-hour brownouts, we have to import LNG, and that will make our power very expensive. It's one of the most expensive already in Asia.
Mm-mm. Or do you believe there's an underlying motivation here? You talked about gas. Is this China's way of tying our hands into getting into a joint venture for both countries to explore this part of the ocean?
That's part of it because China is doing this also to Vietnam and Malaysia. So China wants, China is the bully. You want to play in the playground, you stay in a little place because that playground belongs to me. Or if you find something in that playground, if you find something of value, you share it with me. That's exactly what's happening.
Now, Justice, if this goes on, are you seeing another possibility of a Scarborough Shoal standoff? Could that happen again?
It's possible if China does to the Philippines what it is doing to Vietnam, because they have a face-off often. Their Coast Guards have a face-off often. And China has brought its drilling platform within the EEZ of Vietnam. And in fact, there was speculation before that China might bring its newly built drilling platform to Reed Bank. The Vietnamese were telling me that that was really the intention, but they finally brought it to Vietnam.
Okay, can China's actions in Ayungin Shoal already be considered grounds for the activation of the Mutual Defense Treaty in terms of coming to the aid of an ally, not in terms of necessarily going to war?
Well, the treaty, the Mutual Defense Treaty is triggered by an armed attack on a public vessel. And the water cannon is not considered an armed attack. It's considered a use of force, but it's not armed. I mean, so there's that technicality. So, but the Americans have reiterated. He said, if the Chinese were using armed force, that will trigger the operation of the treaty, and we will be obliged to honor our treaty. So it's a warning to China, and that should give us assurance why we should be very forceful in protecting our sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea.
So, Justice, given that technicality in the Mutual Defense Treaty, and times have changed, China's actions have escalated, is it time to already tweak the Mutual Defense Treaty?
Well, the Mutual Defense Treaty that we have is exactly the same treaty that the U.S. has with other countries. And that treaty says, our treaty says that the actions of the both parties will go through their constitutional process. That means they need Congress, their own Congress, to declare war. We need our own Congress to declare war. But that is true in all the treaties of the U.S. There's no automatic retaliation. However, of course, the U.S. president is authorized under the War Powers Act to use force for 90 days in case U.S. Troops or forces are attacked outside of the U.S. That's why if you attack the U.S. base in Japan, the U.S. president can automatically authorize retaliation because he has that authority within 90 days under the War Powers Act. And that gives assurance to all the treaty partners of the US.
But clearly, Justice, China must know this technicality and is taking advantage of the fact. So
That
they
is
don't
correct.
have to go into an armed attack. But then,
That
for
is correct.
example, yes, a water cannon attack. So you hold off a shoal. You go into a standoff. Kumbaga pang matagalan ang laban nila eh. So
That's
what
correct.
options does the Philippines have in
That's
terms
correct.
of taking advantage of the United States as an ally?
That's correct. The Chinese know we have a mutual defense treaty, and they know that for the treaty to operate, there must be an armed attack. So they are not attacking the BRP Sierra Madre with arms. They're attacking it with water. So, and they are just circling around BRP Sierra Madre waiting for the superstructure to collapse. What should we do? We should rebuild there. Put up an artificial structure there, which is more permanent. Second, we should send our Coast Guard vessel, a public vessel, so that if it is subject to attack, we can invoke the treaty. The Chinese know that we have this treaty, and that's why they will never fire on our public vessel.
But then, kumbaga, it's really the long-term strategy of this all. So when I hear you, Justice, it seems the Philippines is failing on its part with actions that we can do.
Yes, there's no long-term strategy because President Duterte is only thinking of himself, of his commitment to President Xi. I don't know if he committed to President Xi that he will give up Ayungin Shoal, because that is the claim of China officially. The Chinese spokesperson said the Philippines made the commitment to give up Ayungin Shoal. And the only person who could do that, to give that commitment, is President Duterte. So we should ask him, did he make a commitment?
Okay, but not talking about the president himself per se. Many past administrations have come, and the BRP Sierra Madre has been there since 1999. Not one president has put up another structure, or not one president has upgraded actually BRP Sierra Madre or retrofitted it. Is it us also? It's whichever administration comes. We've taken this for granted and neglected the West Philippine Sea.
That's correct, Karen. Remember, in 1999, we beached, that was during the time of President Estrada, and the Defense Secretary was Orly Mercado. We beached BRP Sierra Madre to protect Ayungin Shoal. So we have an outpost there. It was a cheap way of building an outpost. And at the same time, we also beached another landing ship in Scarborough Shoal. That was done at the same time. But during the time of, because Estrada was ousted and President Macapagal Arroyo took over, there was this visit of the Chinese premier to the Manila, and he would not come here unless we pull out our landing ship in Scarborough Shoal. So we pulled out our landing ship in Scarborough Shoal.
Under
What happened
Arroyo's
after that?
time. Under Arroyo's time.
Yes, under Arroyo's time, so that the Chinese premier could visit here. He was demanding, before he would visit Manila, we remove the ship that we beached on Scarborough Shoal, and we removed it, and they took over Scarborough Shoal. They had that design even then. It's a long-term design of China to control the South China Sea, and they are doing this incrementally. So we have to understand that this is a long-term strategy of China. This was not, China didn't start this during the time of Aquino. They started this way back in the 1980s, but they did not have the naval might at the time. So now that they have the naval might, they are enforcing their claim.
And I think, Justice, it's important that you're contextualizing this in terms of its historical value and perspective, because then you understand how China behaves. So if they've done it with Scarborough Shoal, they look back a few years, they know then that they can do this with Ayungin Shoal.
That's correct. They're precisely targeting Ayungin Shoal. And that's why whoever made that commitment, if there was a commitment, just doesn't know the history of the West Philippine Sea dispute and doesn't understand the long-term strategy of China. The long-term strategy of China is to make the 9-dash line the national boundary of China. And we will lose 80% of our exclusive economic zone. That 80% is larger than the land territory of the Philippines. If you put all our islands together, that will be smaller than the maritime area that we will lose to China under the 9-dash line.
Oo. Now, Justice, the United States has offered or given its strongest statement yet after this incident. But how can U.S. presence actually change the landscape in the West Philippine Sea?
Well, first we can have joint patrols with the U.S.
You've said that many times.
Yeah, we should
Yet
have
we've
joint
refused.
patrols. It's so
We've
obvious.
refused. Yeah.
Yes, let's have joint patrols for both the Coast Guard and the Navy. Second, let's enter into that convention with other countries. And that convention, the other coastal states outside of the region can join, can accede to that convention. And that convention will debunk China's 9-dash line. So China will be isolated. And the world is with us. They have been coming out with statements. Germany, Netherlands, Britain, France. They're just waiting for us to move.
Oo. And what can the Philippines learn in terms of what other countries are experiencing with China today? I think the Uganda experience with its airport is quite telling.
Yes, Uganda has to give up its airport because it could not repay its loan. And that loan was used to build that airport. And of course, China will build an oversized airport that will not be economically feasible to repay the debt. So you will be in debt. And they always have this clause that they can go after your assets anywhere, your commercial assets. And I've pointed this out, that the our loans with China, the mother agreement, contain this clause that in case of dispute on the loan, that arbitration will be held in Beijing, and we will follow Chinese arbitration rules. There will be 3 arbiters, 2 from China, 1 from the Philippines. There's no way we can win. And that's how Uganda lost in this arbitration.
May punto ka naman dyan, Apo Justice. Pero sa pagtatanggol ng teritoryo natin, dapat lagi ang handa sa anuman laban na siyang ginagawa ngayon ng administrasyon. Meron tayong military modernization na sa katunayan nga, pang number 28 na tayong malakas ang kakayahan sa ating hukbo. At ito hindi pa sapat. Kaya ang pagsasanlipuwersa natin sa Amerika ay sinakakatuparan na. Tungayan ang ating next video upang mas lalo nating maintindihan ang sigalot sa West Philippine Sea.
Welcome, it's me again, History and Facts TV. Alam naman natin, o ang karamihan sa atin, na bawal mang-angkin ng hindi natin pag-aari. Alam natin na ito ay masama, maliban na lang kung matigas talaga ang iyong mukha. Anyway, ang pag-uusapan natin ngayon ay ang kakilakilabot na pagbabanta ng mga komunista sa bansang Pilipinas. Tingin niyo mga tropa, kung makikipagdigmaan ng bansang Pilipinas sa China, may magagawa ba tayo? Kaya bang lumaban ng Pilipinas nang hindi humihingi ng tulong sa kahit ano o sinong bansa? Well, bago natin ipagpatuloy ay baka naman pwedeng pakisubscribe ng ating YouTube channel. Maraming salamat. Ang away sa pagitan ng bansang Pilipinas at China ay nagsimula pa noong termino ng nakaraang administrasyon, kung saan nais ng bansang China na kunin ang mga alleged territories nila gamit ang ebidensyang 9-dash line. Anyway, bibigyan ko kayo ng trivia mga tropa. Alam nyo ba na ang 9-dash line na ipinaglalaban ng China ay ayon sa kanilang mga ninuno na kung tawagin ay Han Dynasty. Sinasabi nila na ipinaglaban pa ito ng kanilang mga ninuno, kung kaya naman ay kanila itong inaangkin at walang sinong makakapigil. Tuloy natin. Ayon sa mga Chino, ang nasabing 9-dash line na lumalampas sa West Philippine Sea, Vietnam Sea, Malaysian Sea at sa iba pang mga bansa ay pag-aari nila. Ngunit tumanggi ang mga bansa at ang UN o United Nations na mapa sa kamay ng China ang malawak na teritoryo sa South China Sea. At ayon sa batas ng karagatan, hindi dapat angkinin ng isang bansa ang pangdagat na teritoryo ng bansa dahil planado na ang kanilang teritoryo. Ibig sabihin, hawak na ito ng isang bansa at mayroong batas para dito. Kumbaga, ito ay titulado na. At higit sa lahat, labag sa batas pangkaragatan ang pagsakop sa international waters, kung saan maraming barko mula sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo na dumaraan dito. Ngunit sa kabila ng mga batas na ito ay kinukuha pa rin ito ng China. Dahil sa gayon, nagtayo ng mga infrastruktura ang China sa mga isla ng Pilipinas. Ang ating gobyerno ay nag-file ng kaso laban sa China, ngunit tumanggi ang China at nais makipag-usap sa ating gobyerno at hindi sa ibang bansa. Dahil alam nila na ang WPS ay pag-aari ng Pilipinas, pero tumanggi ang pamahalaan ng Pilipinas sa nais ng bansang China. Hanggang sa naging Pangulo si Pangulong Duterte at inayos at nakipagkasundo sa mga Chino na iwanan na ang West Philippine Sea at makipag-organisa ng mapayapa, walang digmaan, walang gulo, at sa gayon nakipagkasundo ang China at tinulungan ng Pilipinas sa mga infrastruktura. Ito ang kapalit ng pag-share nila sa ating teritoryo, ang kanilang tulong pinansyal at tulong infrastruktura sa ating bansa. Pero hindi ibig sabihin noon ay ganap ng kanila ang WPS dahil bago nila mahawakan ang teritoryo ay dadaan muna sila sa kamay ng United Nations, Estados Unidos at ang matinding North Atlantic Treaty Organization o NATO. Sa ngayon, hindi pa rin maiiwasan ang mga illegal fishing na kadalas ay nasa ating teritoryo at madalas ay ang mga lahing Chino. At dahil dito, nagkaroon ng aksidente sa Recto Bank kung saan isang Chinese fishing vessel ay bumangga sa isang maliit na Filipino fishing vessel. Noong mga nakalipas na taon, pangako ng hukbong pandagat ng Pilipinas, babantayan nila ang mga illegal na mangingisda na pumapasok sa teritoryo ng ating bansa. Sa kabila ng mga nangyayaring ito, ano ang sabi ng mga komunista? Pinaubayan na ba nila ang teritoryong ito? Hindi. Dahil kahit na nanalo na ang ating bansa sa kasong isinampa sa kanila at kalaunay nanalo noong 2016 ay hindi pa rin binibitawan ng mga komunista ang lugar. Alam mo ba tropa na nagbanta pa nga ang presidente nito na kung ipipilit daw ng Pilipinas ang kagustuhan nito sa WPS ay mapipilitan na makipagdigmaan ng China sa Pilipinas. E ano naman ang sabi ng pamahalaan hingil dito? Ang sabi, ayos lang naman kung mga laman dagat lang ang kukunin o hihingin. Pero kung usapang langis naman ay makikipagdigmaan din ng Pilipinas. Well, akala siguro ng China ay ganun-ganun lang ang mga Pinoy. Kailangan pa sigurong ipaalala sa kanila ang nangyari noong Korean War. E ano naman ang sabi ng Amerika na kaalyado ng Pilipinas tungkol sa pagbaba ng digmaan ng mga Chino sa Pilipinas? Well, huwag lang daw gagalawin ang hukbong sandatahan ng Pilipinas kung ayaw nila ng gulo. Ganyan kamahal ang Amerika ang Pilipinas, hindi ko lang alam kung iyon ay totoo. Ang Amerika at Pilipinas ay mayroong tinatawag na Mutual Defense Treaty kung saan obligadong tulungan ng bawat isa ang isa't isa kung sakali na may mangyayaring pagsalakay. Well, kung totoo man natutulong ang Amerika sa Pilipinas ay sigurado na liyamado ito, pero sana ito ay pagtulong na walang kapalit o kondisyon. Ang mga pagbabanta ng China sa Taiwan, Japan, Amerika, Pilipinas at sa iba pang mga bansa ay puros pagbabanta at walang natutupad. Ganito sila kapotso. Kahit sila pa ang pangatlo sa pinakamalakas na bansa sa buong mundo, sila naman ang numero 1 pinaka-wagdo.
Well mga kasangga, alam na dis. Baka naman pwede na mag-like, mag-share at mag-comment. Just Gina Apo. Hanggang sa muli!